Hi guys, my name is Steve Walker. I am, as Andrew said, the co-director of the Comics and Narrative Arts program. I've also been the instructor of comics and sequential arts here at the Art Students League for almost 20 years. I am also a working cartoonist. I've drawn books for Random House, books for Tor Books, for Black Mass Productions, for Image Comics. I publish my own work under my own imprint, and I'm currently working on my creator-owned work, The Black Forge Chronicles. That's me. That's what I do. I love this medium, and I love working in this medium. And I am so happy to be here with these fine folks tonight. And let me talk to you or tell you about some of the practitioners of this craft that I have up here with me tonight. First, we have Brooklyn's own Olivia Fields. Olivia is an illustrator whose work has appeared in the New York Times, Scholastic. Her work has appeared for Google, HP, Variety, and the ACLU. Her comics have appeared in the sci-fi comics anthology Cyberludes, and cover subject matter ranging from mental health to exploration. Olivia's work has a focus on delicate line work and a balance between chic and chaos. Personal favorite piece of hers is one that's called Molgoths versus Visigoths, really cute, and largely influenced by Black beauty and identity. Next up, Mahdi Khene. Mahdi's been making comics for the past 5 years. Oh, please.
More, no, I'm kidding.
Starting with his first book, Superhero Comics, which he would rework 2 times. Then Steel Streets and Bootleg Spider-Man. The Adventures of Clive Danger, and most recently, The Martin Man. Mahdi's work is characterized by nonlinear storytelling and art that is influenced by the comics of the 80s. A true believer in the DIY aesthetic, Mahdi has gone so far as to create his own publishing imprint, Superhero Comics, that puts out his comics exclusively. Dean Haspiel has had his feet planted in the worlds of mainstream and independent comics for years. His work has appeared in books from Marvel and DC, as well as having worked with author Jonathan Ames on the graphic novel The Alcoholic, and Harvey Pekar on American Splendor. He was a co-founder of the webcomics collective Activate in 2006, has edited comics collections for Smith Magazine, won an Emmy for the title illustrations for the HBO series Bored to Death, and since 2016 has worked on a serialized webcomic, The Red Hook. Recently, his Kickstarter for his latest project, Chestface, was funded in March of this year.
Congrats.
And Klaus Janson has a career that continues. Yeah, please give it up.
Thanks.
Has a career that continues to produce great work. Klaus's work has helped to define and redefine characters with his work on Daredevil and Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, both with Frank Miller. He has worked as a penciler, an inker, a colorist, and writer, penning the creator-owned series Sacred Creatures with artist Pablo Raimondi. The first volume releasing in 2018, and a second volume is currently in production. Is that correct, Klaus?
That's correct. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for mentioning that.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Klaus is known as an educator, having taught comics at the School of Visual Arts and written the DC Comics Guide to Inking Comics and the DC Comics Guide to Penciling Comics. Ladies and gentlemen, your panelists.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
So just kind of want to get started right off the bat. A question I get asked a lot by students is, how do I break into comics? And my answer for them is never straightforward. Each of you has a career in commercial art, and I'm just curious as to how you navigate that career. So Olivia, would you like to?
Yeah, I feel like when I started out, I did a lot of social media outreach. I used a lot of different hashtags at the time. I feel like I started off on Instagram, which was at the time a different platform altogether. I feel like the way it's navigating now, it's more leaning towards video output, but at the time it was still very heavily photo-based, and it still is. I feel like a lot of people still use it for that primary reason. And when I did, I feel like that's how I got a lot of the work that I got at the beginning of my career was through hashtags like one of them is like Drawing While Black, which was at the time organized by Abel Hayford. Another one is, I believe, Women Who Draw, or something to that effect as well. And I didn't have any experience with the work that I do now. I primarily work in editorial illustration, so I just wanted to kind of get my work out there and just seen. And at the time, there were people who were taking chances on me and what I was doing, and that led to more work in the future.
That's awesome. Mahdi.
Well, my path in comics has been a little, weird. A little suspect. I saw the industry as like a party that I didn't think I'd get invited into, so I just started my own party. That's it. And I just kind of created my own little publishing house to give myself a sense of legitimacy, because I figured published by Mahdi Khene could be good, but if people maybe believed there was a publisher behind me, then they'd buy the books. And then I just never stopped. And then it's been 3 years, and now I've managed to kind of forge a humble career from that initial impetus. That's a good word, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say you started your own party, because one advice I give when people ask me about comics, I was like, you got to show up to your own party.
That's right.
And what I mean by that, I don't mean necessarily whooping it up and drinking and getting hangovers every day, but like, you're an individual creator.
Yep.
And a lot of people start out thinking they need to be sanctioned by an institution or sanctioned by a publisher, an editor, or a group of artists or whoever. And I'm like, why? I mean, that's cool. I mean, when I was 12 years old, I decided I was going to be a cartoonist one day. So I became otherwise unemployable because of that. It meant any job I took after that, I was half-assed at it. I didn't care about it, right? Because what I cared about was trying to write and draw comics. In fact, it wasn't even writing, it was just drawing, because I didn't think I could write. And it wasn't until later that I realized I was writing because I was drawing comics where image is text too, right? In terms of like trying to find who I am, you start by trying to submit portfolios, or you go up to the Marvel offices back when I think that was possible. I don't even think that's possible anymore today.
No.
Or DC, and you go and you say, I have a portfolio, and then we would look at it, and I wouldn't get a job. I remember going to heavy metal, and they were like, keep going, keep trying, kind of thing. So with keep trying means that I'm still trying to work for them, and it wasn't until later on I realized I needed to work for me, and to carve your own lane. But I'm really excited that I was able to actually draw like canon Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Batman, Superman, not runs like this guy or as influential as a Klaus Janson, but I've dipped my toes. But in doing so, I started to write and draw my own characters. And so I'd hopscotch between drawing their heroes or drawing mine, or doing memoir versus superhero, print versus web. You're talking about Instagram, like we didn't have Instagram when I was trying to make comics, So I remember writing letters to this chain thing where you wrote letters to people.
What is a letter?
A letter with paper and pen, and that's another thing. I still use paper and pen, sorry, to draw. I heard about this tablet thing. Anyway, so you would reach out, and I would like write a guy in Kentucky, and then we would like talk on the phone and hatch a plan and try to create a character for, that's what you would do back then. Now it's
the Wild West.
It's the Wild West because they've leveled the playing field with social media. Let's just say it like that.
For sure.
But if you want to be a cartoonist, it's easier than ever before, because you don't ever have to have read or seen a Marvel or DC comic. Back when I was younger, that's what you strive for. Unless you were just super alternative, like an R. Crumb or something, right? And doing underground comics.
Well, there was also, when we were coming up, there was Kamiko.
There were alternative publishers.
Yeah.
So, and in my senior year of high school, which was LaGuardia's first year, 1985, I had the privilege and luck of befriending Larry O'Neill, Danny O'Neill's son, who had gotten wind that this guy, Bill Sienkiewicz, wanted an assistant, who was down the hall from Howard Chaykin and Walt Simonson. I don't know if these names mean anything to y'all, but back then, oh my God, these were the hot dogs. And I think Frank was in that
This
studio.
was at Upstart.
At Upstart, that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I was going to an art school, but I had to go to like hang out with cartoonists to learn comics. You know, back then we didn't have, I mean, that maybe SVA was around. Maybe one other school might have been teaching comics, but not like today, where I think every school might have a comics course.
That's a good point, which is your path forward wasn't always clear, and you didn't know like how to. What was the way forward, Klaus? What was the way forward for you? Because you're coming at it from that kind of thing, where it's like you meet somebody, you put your name forward, and you kind of go from there.
That's exactly right, and I think Dean mentioned a lot of what I would say. The way I got in was I tricked my way into DC Comics one day. I lived in Connecticut, and DC was, of course, in New York, and I asked the receptionist if I could come in and meet people, and she said, "No, we don't do that." And I got all dressed up. I had a tie on, and and I said, "But I'm wearing a tie. You got to let me in. I got dressed up for this." So, long story short, I met Dick Giordano, and by coincidence, he lived in the town next to me in Connecticut. I lived in Bridgeport. He lived in Stratford, and he recognized me from all of the nerdy letters that I sent to Charlton Comics when he was editor at Charlton. And I said to him I wanted to be an artist, and he said, "Come up to my place and show me your work." And we became friends, and that was invaluable in terms of getting some guidance, getting some advice, and also support. It was that version of networking is what you would do today. I attached myself to him like a barnacle on a boat. And he was very, very kind and very, very generous with his time. I learned a lot from him. I became an apprentice with him for about a year. And I learned a lot. And he guided me, whenever I had something that I needed to deal with or address, I would call him up and he would tell me, listen, do this, do that. And the idea of having a mentor, I don't even know if it's possible anymore. I think it is possible. I've mentored a lot of kids through the years, but it's invaluable getting that kind of first-hand experience and first-hand advice.
Yeah, I've been lucky in my own career a whole lot to have a whole bunch of different mentors kind of guide me through and kind of help out with my career. Much like you, Klaus, my first job was being an apprentice, being an assistant to Jamal Eigel, and then Fred Harper, and then Steve Ellis, and just whoever was willing to teach me outside of the school environment and the stuff that you don't learn in school a lot of the time.
That's right. Yeah.
What are some things that, because I know some of us have an art school education. What are some of the things that they did not teach you in school that you learned on the job? Or like that you learned just by doing? And I open this question up to all of you, if whoever wants to jump in.
I mean, that's most of comics, I think, is you're learning on the job because, like I said, I think it's just more recent. It feels like there's a lot of more comic school, as it were, but the real school is on the job, I think. I did a lot of learning, but when I was, again, with Howard Chaykin and Sienkiewicz and Simonson, they're all three different artists with three different approaches. Right. You were learning about economy and what we call deadline art, because they were trying to serve a deadline, so if you have a whole year to draw 24 pages, you can vogue all you want and, draw a page 3 times over, but you can't. So you realize that it's such a shorthand art, I don't know what my art looks like if you gave me time. you know? So do you have a thought? Or?
Oh, no, I definitely agree. I feel like coming into it, you go in thinking that you might have a certain amount of time to do something, but in the short end of it, it's like every deadline is different. No client is the same, which is why it's so important to, like advocate for that time, because if you can, it's just more important to be able to do your best work than, or I don't know, sometimes it's a little bit of both. Like you want to do your best work, but you also want to get it done. But you also don't want to break your body in the process of doing that as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I've yet to get a freelance job. So I've been just self-producing my comics and peddling them as, a wood CD in a trunk. And it's just kind of, I learned that, especially in the indie sphere, talking to people and seeing what their actual opinions are about the industry, in comic shops, I mean. And one guy specifically, from Jim Henley's universe, Nick, he told me that when people stop reading a comic, what they do is they pick up another comic. And so that's when I understood I need to be productive. I need to be an indie guy that's able to do a monthly book. I need to be consistent. I need to do the work. I was working as a barista in a cafe, so I was using that to finance that, but I just kept it, kept the scales kind of balanced as well as I could, balancing plates, until I was able to do something full time. And so for me, it was like, it's never been about the classes you take, but the hands you shake,
But just going back briefly to the studio thing you're talking about and mentoring,
Yeah.
I do think that's really key, or it really helped me a lot. And then I went from being in a studio to then going to college and whatever and bouncing around, but then craving that studio environment again and starting a studio, one online, Activate, back in 2006, right, which was an online comics collective, but it felt almost like a studio because of that, because you could talk to these other cartoonists and have that conversation and show your stuff. But then to physically get a space with like 5 other cartoonists, or there's 6 of us, and then that expanded at one point to about 14 cartoonists in a big ass room. And then COVID happened, and they all became parking spots because everyone was home, and I was the only one going there. It was like, it felt like it was insane how lonely it was, and I do, yes, we're all fooled to think that we're hanging out with people because of social media and the phone and the computer. But nothing beats actually sitting across from someone and you're sitting there and you're like, I can't draw, I can't do anything. And then you're looking over that person and you're like, and you're trying to steal some of that energy like a cat, like hanging over, stealing someone's breath, And then you go over and you talk about this stuff and you're like, well, you know what I think, And then you got to go and you have to you deal with imposter syndrome half the time too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But also, I found the studio was a really good way to get jobs too.
Absolutely.
Because let's say you're in between jobs, somebody else has too much work, they can hand something off to you. How do you guys pivot when it comes to like you're working on one thing and then suddenly another job comes up? Like, what does that look like for each one of you? Because I know what it looks like for me, and it's usually like, okay, I'll put that on the schedule next week, because that's when I have the time for it. Like, what does that look like for you, Olivia?
I feel like I'm the type of person where I can't do multiple things at once when it comes to like illustration. I feel like I always have to work on that one project, or like they have to kind of be at different points. So something could be in the early stages and then something else comes along. I get that done and then I start that next project and then I go back and forth. It's really hard for me to like juggle multiple things at once, but if they're in different like points of being completed, then it feels a little bit easier to balance them all out.
For me, I find it keeps all my ideas fresh. The more books I have to work at the same time, or the more insanity the more chaos I get, the happier I feel. I don't know what it is, but it's just, if I can do a noir book on Monday and Tuesday, and then go to sci-fi, and then do a crazy street level video, you know what I mean?
It's got these plates.
Exactly,
always.
yeah. It's a circus, but circuses are fun, you know what I mean? Now, that's how I feel about it.
When I multitask myself, okay? So if I'm working on an actual paid gig,
Right.
it's almost the last thing I want to do, because then now suddenly I'm like, I got to write this screenplay, I'm going to write this play, I'm going to write this other I'm going to come out. And I don't know why it activates those juices, as it were, but I just think it's a good problem to have, right? It's a good problem to have, and usually the way it works is you're working on one project, hopefully it's different enough from the other ones. So it's activating different, synapse responses to different things.
Right.
So but it's a good problem to have. I don't have that problem a lot. I have a feeling you had that problem a bunch of times.
I found out late in life, well, not that late, but I found out that what really works for me, and you have to find out what works for you. But I think that the fundamental approach that I use is, number one, I take what I do very seriously. I'm not fooling around. Now, having said that, I have a lot of fun doing what I do. I really, really enjoy it, because if I didn't enjoy it, I would have stopped a long time ago. So I take it very seriously, and in that respect, taking it seriously means to me, what works for me is I have 2 or 3 things going on at the same time. I'll have a pencil job, I'll have an ink job, I'll have coloring or writing or teaching or doing something else. Basically, penciling and inking, 2 different jobs, if not 3 different jobs. I'll have a cover to do, I'll have some interior work to do, and I find that refreshes me. I'll pencil something in the morning, I'll ink something at night. So it keeps, as Dean said, it keeps different parts of your brain activated. That works for me. But I encourage everybody to figure out what works for them. I'm a list person. I make lots of lists. I know exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow, including, when I'm going to have lunch, who I'm going to have lunch with, what page I'm going to pencil tomorrow, what page I'm going to ink tomorrow. You don't always get to do everything on the list, but if there's 8 out of 10, that's a really, really good day. And if you have 10 things, I'm sorry. But that is the reality. You do have a lot on your list.
I'm a list guy too, but I'm a list guy in my head. I can keep the whole thing in my head, which scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because they're...
Yeah, that is scary.
I got to add lunch to my list.
Got to add lunch to your list.
Start eating more, yeah.
What the hell?
When to eat. I got one more general question, then I've got some specific questions for each one of you, which is part of our job as creators, as comic artists, is interacting with the public in social settings, which can be, on occasion, a little daunting for people sometimes. How do you guys handle it? Like when you have to go to a con, when you have to meet a whole bunch of people for the first time, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I love it. It's probably one of the highlights of being a creative for me, because so much of it is, for me, isolating. I work from home, so I don't really go out very much when I'm doing my work, but I get to have that separate space to just, also interact with other people and talk about my work and myself, and also just to get, just an experience that's outside of my daily, behind the desk type thing, and just also have these words of affirmation when I'm meeting someone for the first time, or if it's someone that I've seen before. That's also very nice, just to have that person that comes back and just wants more. I just really enjoy it very much.
Me too. Dean, I think you're an introvert, so I don't know if you can relate to this.
I am.
Shy is what I would call Haspiel.
Yeah, we're shy here. No, but I love it too. It's my first year doing conventions. I've been making comics for 3 years. So my first year doing conventions, it was kind of a lonely event. You'd sit there and people would walk by you, and you kind of try, but then nothing would happen. Yeah, please. And but you meet people. You meet the guy sitting next to you, whatever. And then second and third year, you start getting fans. And then they come up to your table and they want to talk to you about your work, which feels surreal. It doesn't feel real. And then another time, a person will cosplay as your character. And so for me, it's just this kind of, this give and take of just, it feels like magic, honestly, to me, when people are coming up to your table and wanting to buy your work, wanting to spend their cash on something you did. It's a beautiful thing.
That that tip about people feeling nervous. If you're in a room, imagine them all naked, kind of a thing. I do the opposite. I imagine myself naked, or sometimes literally. So.
Get your pencils
I
out.
can't get canceled, right? I'm just I'm not running for mayor or nothing, right? So.
Well, not anymore.
So, no, but in all honesty, like, I do get nervous. I don't think I'm an introvert, but I do get shy. Trust me, and like, but I also know that it doesn't serve me. Mm-hmm. And there have been too many regrets I've had where, like, maybe I saw someone I wanted to talk to, and I was too shy, and then, they might have passed away. I never saw them again. And I'm like, if only I could have gone and said thank you for what you did, or what, how you influenced me, or something, or have a conversation that might lead to something unexpected, And I think that it's just important to show up to your own party.
This is one of my favorite things to tell young artists, young writers, or young creative people, which is learn to be self-aware. Learn to understand who you are, what you want. Learn to understand what your weaknesses are, how to overcome them. I taught myself how to navigate being an introvert. So I don't know if I've taught myself to be an extrovert. I don't think I'm an extrovert. I'm an introvert. My job lends itself to that also. I work at home, I work by myself. But when people come up to you at a convention or sometimes I get recognized at Whole Foods or something like that, you have to be nice to them. These are the people that are literally paying your rent. These are the people that have affection for you, that have love for you. And I always extend myself. I always try to be as friendly as I possibly can. But I learned through therapy, through reading, through experience, what my weaknesses are and how to overcome them. And I'm not saying I have overcome them, but it helps being self-aware and understanding yourself and how you interact with people.
So my experience was very much the same. Was the first time I ever tabled at a convention, I was an introvert. I still am. That doesn't change. But I made the conscious choice that weekend. Like, I am going to be open and friendly, and everyone who comes up to the table, I am going to say hello to and look them in the eye and shake their hand and talk to them about the work or whatever they want to talk about.
And watch other people do it too, like Dean.
Yeah.
He's amazing at it. You can learn a lot by just watching people and thinking, oh, that's how they do it, right?
Yeah.
So you just kind of train yourself.
So we're going to go through just like individual questions for each of you. Olivia, starting with you. Your clientele spans a wide range of print, film, and video games. How much footwork is involved in that? Are you constantly sending out portfolio, or does work beget work?
So I feel like so I went to the School of Visual Arts. First I went to FIT for 2 years. I graduated in 2017, and then I went to the School of Visual Arts for my BFA in illustration, and I graduated in 2019. And at the time, I feel like there was a lot of people reaching out to me to do work, especially in 2020. There was a lot of things going on regarding like Black Lives Matter, and they were doing a lot to elevate Black artists at the time. And I feel like that was probably where I had the most work as I was coming out of school. It wasn't something that I had to worry about. I actually started working in editorial before I graduated, which was, something that I don't take for granted. I'm very grateful for. And from that, it expanded into the clientele that you mentioned. So at the time, I think that work was like just work on top of work. I was just posting the work I was doing. Some of it wasn't necessarily the work I saw myself doing out of school, but I was getting my foot in the door. It was experience for me. So I just took those opportunities and knew that they could lead to other things, and they did. And I feel like as time has progressed, the work has been a little bit slower. There are times where, you know, that's just something that we all experience. There's those dry patches where you're not getting as much work as you usually do. And during those times, I feel like I was also taking the opportunity to kind of do work for myself because I'm so used to doing work for other people. But I usually do just, you know, continue to post what I am doing, and the work has over time just continually been emails of, you know, opportunities and just inquiries from other people. But I did learn in school that if I did have to reach out to clients, you know, I would send an email, just a little introduction about the work I do, maybe 3 to 5 images of the stuff that I have. I also try to participate again in like the hashtags, where I guess in that sense it's more so how I guess another generation of artists are getting the work today. I like to just, you know, let people know that I'm available for work and see where that leads as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. Is letting people know that you're available for work. Some people don't realize that that's a big part of it, right? And it's just like saying like, hey, I'm open for the possibility. Right?
Two
Right.
quick things, like what you just
Yeah.
said, both, like, definitely let people know that you're available to work because they think you're busy.
Yeah.
We're
And,
available,
like,
guys.
I'm not always, trust me. And the other thing that's really important to me, and you, like I follow a lot of comics websites, so I read the news. What editor moved from that company to that company, that publisher, this and that. And often what I do, without soliciting, I'm like, congratulations. I send an email or I find a way to say something. Because a lot of people aren't doing that, you know? And I think that the people that could hire you appreciate it when you acknowledge them and acknowledge a transition or a change or they got an award for something. I tend to like, and because you never know how ultimately that could boomerang back to you, and they might be looking for somebody or something, and they're like, oh, that guy, remember
Or
that?
they
I like that guy.
They might have had you in the back of their mind for something, and as soon as you send that,
It could happen that too.
Right.
So,
Mahdi,
Yes.
coming into the world of comics for you has been very learn as you go.
Yeah.
What is something that you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I think I know less now than I did before.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because you had, I mean, right?
the answer is you wish you had met me earlier.
That's one thing. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. No, I don't know. So COVID started, and then I went from pursuing a music career to being a barista to being, nothing wrong with that, by the way. I know everything about espresso. To doing that, to kind of meandering around and wondering what to do, and then comics popped in serendipitously. And my idea of comic books was so vague that I thought, okay, it's pictures and words, and let's just start. And as I keep going, it keeps opening up more and more and more. And so every day I feel like I'm just starting over, every time. Every time I think I have a handle on the medium, it surprises me. And so, I don't know. I hope it stays like that, because I think once you stop learning, you stop kind of living,
Always
you know?
learning.
Yeah, always learning.
It will surprise you.
Well, I'm surprised right now. It's like, yeah.
Dean, your career is eclectic. Comics, webcomics, illustration, film, and even having, as you mentioned, directed and written several plays. All storytelling, but not all comics. Are you following opportunity or instinct?
Oh, that's interesting. Opportunity or instinct? My gut says instinct.
Sure.
But it's got to be some opportunity
Right.
that I'm paying attention to. Like I said, like I'll write an editor or a publisher, and because there's an opportunity moment to even acknowledging other folks. I mean, I think it's super important for community and communication, and then comics or storytelling of all kinds. I just think communication is so key, and then building a kind of a community, or being super aware, like you were saying, like being aware of yourself, but be aware of who you're around and read the room in some ways, you know? But this is gonna sound weird, but about 2.5 years ago, I quit comics. And in quitting comics is when I started kickstarting comics. Because I think what I realized that was happening, I was so frustrated with what a publisher might offer you, and then they kickstart it, and then you're doing the Kickstarter, and then they're getting all, and you're like, what am I getting out of this? Or the models of publishing has changed so much that I was getting like, I don't belong here, and I was begging for morsels at Marvel and DC, and getting like a little 8-pager here, a 10-pager there, and I'm like, oh my God, I can barely survive. And so mentally, I quit comics so I could like rebirth my idea of it. And you had said something about joy. So Jonathan Ames is a good friend of mine and a writer, and when he would teach writing, he said, try to find joy in every sentence you write, which is, come on, that's impossible, right? But I like the idea behind that. And so if I'm not gonna make money and I'm not gonna be able to really survive in the career of making comics, I better be having fun. So I decided to make comics that just brought me joy.
And that goes back to what you said, your own party, right?
Your own party.
And I found
And
the
then
same
other people,
thing.
it's infectious, I
Yeah.
found. Because when I see you having a party on your I'm like,
Every day.
and he shouldn't be allowed to make comics, but he is.
Yeah.
He's having
Okay.
way too much fun, guys.
I am. I just want to play. What happened to playing, right?
And so in playing, I'm like, I want to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm playing with myself. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
But
What do you mean for?
Klaus, as a comic artist that can do every job, and as a teacher of comic storytelling, making a career that is also your job sustained for a long period of time, it's not easy. How do you know when it's time to change, and what's the first step in that?
Well, first of all, I think that the choice to do more than one thing was a very deliberate, calculated choice on my part. It was a strategy. Because I felt that if I wasn't going to be able to get work as an inker, I could get work as a penciler or a writer or a colorist, and it turned out to be true. So I think the goal of that strategy is to make yourself valuable to the company so that they can use you and fill a need. Rather than, let's not say use you, but fill a need. I would like to say, though, that one of the things that I learned that I didn't know when I was a kid is that the companies and the editors have a different agenda than you do. And they're not, don't get scared, they're not your friend. Their agenda is to get the book out, to make money, to put keisters in the seat, to sell comics. And if your agenda is also that, but I find that your agenda is self-satisfaction. It's growing as an artist. It's growing as a creative person. It's finding happiness within your work. So you have to understand that their agenda is not your agenda. And you have to navigate their agenda, and you have to play with them. So being able to play well with others, to use a cliche, is a really important talent in and of itself, to serve their agenda and your agenda at the same time. Yeah.
Fantastic. Guys, we're going to have a Q&A in just a minute, but if you could just give us a round of applause one more time for our panelists, Olivia Fields, Mahdi Khene, Dean Haspiel, and Klaus Janson.